Hey guys, I'm Spica, the jungler for TSM, and this is my Nidalee guide. Shout out to Legitech G for sponsoring this video. I really like Nidalee because she is a very mechanically intense champ. I think that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people play her. She is really strong when you're really good at her, and I think she's just in general really versatile and really strong jungler in almost every meta. I think Nidalee's biggest strength is her clearing speed and her skirmishing skills. She clears pretty fast. Among the meta junglers, she is really good at 2v2s, 3v3s. And I think once you get ahead, she snowballs really fast, and that can make the enemy jungler's life pretty hard. Nidalee's weaknesses is mainly that she really has no CC to set up for her main spell, the javelin toss, and once you fall behind as Nidalee, you don't really offer a lot to your team, so if you don't really snowball, it's really hard to play as Nidalee. So here are the rune pages for Nidalee. In the domination tree, there are two options for Nidalee. There is Electric Q and then there's Dark Harvest. I personally prefer Dark Harvest since there's more snowball potential. So, you can try out both and see what you like. On the next slide, I would go Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, and Ravenous Hunter. Those three are pretty standard. They give you the most damage, survivability, and that's what you should run for almost every domination page. In the sub-rune, you really have two options. There's Sorcery and there's Inspiration. Honestly, I think it's down to personal preference. In Sorcery, you could go for Transcendence or Absolute Focus. They're both pretty good. For the dirt roll, I will go Water Walking. In the Inspiration tree, I think Magical Boots and Cosmic Insight is what I run most of the time. I think Magical Boots is really good in solo queue. You get a lot of kills, so the cooldown decreases a lot and you get a lot of value. And Cosmic Insight just allows you to index into more smites, more flash timers, and they're usually really helpful in solo queue to make more plays. And for the stats, I would run Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor and MR, depending on the jungle matchup you're facing against and what's their damage type. So the normal skill order for Nidalee is you want to max Q into E into W and take R points whenever possible. So Nidalee's passive is pretty straightforward, and it enables you to move faster when you're walking around bushes, and when you do hit your Q, you have more movement speed towards hunted targets. So Nidalee's Q in human form is Javelin Toss. It does a lot of damage. It is a long-range skill shot. Her Cougar form Q is an auto attack modifier that deals more damage as the enemy is lower, so it's pretty much an execute. And you really want to hit the Javelin Toss because it marks the enemy and then it enables your next Cougar Q to deal more damage. Nidalee's human form W enables you to place a trap, and any enemy that walks through it is marked and they take a bit of damage and you can see them. And Nidalee's Cougar form W is Pounce. It is a pretty useful ability, and if an enemy is marked, you gain increased range. There's two main uses for Nidalee traps. The first is obviously when you're clearing the jungle, you can use it to reset your W. You mark the enemy and then you can pounce twice per W proc. Another way is that, when you're invading, when you're running through the jungle, it's good to just place it in the enemy jungle. So when the enemy jungler walks through any bushes, trap procs, then you can see them in their location. Another use for Nidalee W is actually to just grant vision. It grants a tiny bit of vision, so it enables you to face check bushes a lot easier. You don't have to walk into the bush, and you can always use it to scout out enemies. Nidalee's human E heals yourself. It is pretty straightforward. It heals based on missing health, and it gives whoever you heal additional attack speed. And Nidalee's Cougar E is just swipe. You just swipe in front of you, that's AoE damage. Nidalee's R is actually just changing to the two forms. It allows her to have 6 skills. That is why she is really strong early game. Another thing to keep in mind is that you have to use your R a lot when you're clearing the jungle, because you want to utilize all your spells when you're clearing the jungle, and that actually makes and break your clear speed. People who use their R form really well, just rotating between the two forms, can clear the jungle a lot faster. For Nidalee's starting item, you have two options. You could go for Blue Smite or Rest Smite. I think pretty much 95% of the time, Rest Smite is better. It's just a really strong ability. It enables your smite to deal dot damage, and it kind of reduces damage the enemy deals to you by like around 20%. I think it's just a much more superior option compared to Blue Smite, where it just slows them, deals true damage. Rest Smite will often swing a lot of 1v1s, 2v2s in your favor, so I think it's the pretty obvious option. In terms of mythic items for Nidalee, the most common one is Night Harvester. It does the most damage. It is really good in solo queue. You could proc out multiple enemies. The second option that I actually been really liking is Everfrost. Everfrost is an active item that gives you a root and a slow when you use it, and I think it's really strong in Nidalee when you don't really have a lot of CC on your team. You kind of became the enabler for yourself, and you can lay your spears after you root them. So I think both item is pretty good, and you should just try both and see what you like. So for starting items on Nidalee, I think it is wildly different depending on what goal you have. Right now, there's 3 options. So the first back option that you have for Nidalee is Lucidity Boots. It is a really strong item for the stats it offers. You get a lot of movement speed. You also get 20 haste, which is really good when you throw the spears out. You get more cooldowns, resets for your jungle clear, and it kind of speeds it up. And the other option is you could go into Amtome Dark Seal. This gives you the most snowball potential, as Dark Seal is a really strong item. If you get a kill, it grants you 5 AP, so you get more stats as you get more kills. And later you upgrade it to Magi's to snowball even faster. The third option, I think you can also go Amtome into Lost Chapter, the 1300 gold item. That item is really strong as well, and that ties into build. It goes really well. It gives you mana regen, mana sustain in the jungle when you level up, and it helps you build into Everfrost. And obviously, the more gold you have, you can go into different items. For example, if you're building Night Harvester, you could go get the 1050 item that gives you damage on proc. You go into Lost Chapter if you want to go for Everfrost, so it just depends on what build you're running. So in terms of boots options, I think usually you could go for 3 or 4 options depending on the game. I think Lucidity Boots is always strong on Nidalee. If you want to deal more damage, snowball faster, you could go Magic Pen Boots. It gives you a lot of damage. If you want to be more tanky, for example, if an enemy has a lot of CC, you could go to Mercury Treads. As for Ninja Tabbies, I don't really like to build it a lot of times. I think you don't really have the HP pool to make it worth, and you're building Zhonya's anyway. It gives you a lot of survivability and armor, so I think Ninja Tabbies is usually overkill. But if they have a lot of auto attackers, full AD team, you can always run that. As for the legendary items, I think Zhonya's should always be built on Nidalee. I think gives you a lot of survivability, it's good stats. It's a really strong active that brings you a lot of time. You could go for crazy plays. And then another item that I really like is Voice Staff. It actually gives you a lot of raw damage. It is cheap, and even on squishy champ targets, it is still really good. Gives you a lot of penetration value, and it's just overall a really efficient item. And for Lich Bane, it's a commonly built item on Nidalee, but I think I personally don't really like it unless you are really fed, because the item proficiency-wise is honestly not that great. You need a lot of the active proc to make it work, so I will only go if you're snowballing, as it does increase your damage by quite a bit. As you build more, I think Banshees is a solid item, but they have a lot of magic damage source. You can always go for decap, and that's usually what your final build would look like. So when I play League, or honestly any other game, something I really like to use is this Logitech G502 Lightspeed mouse. I really like the wireless feature, and I actually really like the fact that you can change the weight around to whatever you're comfortable with. So I think it's a good mouse for anyone. Some people prefer light mouse, some people prefer heavier mouse, so I think you can actually really customize to how you really like it. Even before I joined TSM, I heard a lot of good things about this mouse, and that's why I even picked it up when I believe when I first started playing League, and I've been using it ever since. It just fits my hand really well, and I've just been really enjoying this mouse throughout all my gaming years. There are some champs that make it really effective. For example, you always want to have champs that are good at skirmishing early game. You don't want to pick really hard scaling lanes with Nidalee, because then you're really ignoring what she's strong at, what her power spike is. You also want to draft a lot of CC for Nidalee, because when you play against really good players, their movement is a lot better, so it's a lot harder to hit the spear. So you always want to get a 100% guarantee hit with the CC. So that's why a lot of teams play Renekton Nidalee, for example, TF Nidalee, and CC supports such as Alistar, Leona, Nautilus are all really good for Nidalee, since they have easy CC applications. So the default standard pathing on Nidalee right now is just a full clear. You can start blue or red and just clear all of your jungle quadrant. It is pretty much the best right now, as farming actually gives you the most value as opposed to ganking, and it just gives you a lot of gold and XP so you can do more damage. There are other multiple pathings on Nidalee that is situationally good. For example, you could do buff up Gromp if you want to gank really early, as it gives you the fastest way to level 3 and you can start skirmishing. Another way is actually just doing red buff into enemy jungle. Red to enemy blue is a really common pathing as well. because Nidalee's level 2 is actually stronger than a lot of junglers. So when an enemy jungler is playing greedy champs, or usually tanks in general, they have really weak early game, you can really abuse them and start going to the jungle, try to harass them, steal jungle camps. Something really important about invading when you're playing as Nidalee in almost every jungler is about the lane states. Invading is often very dangerous depending on how you go about it. For example, if your lane doesn't have prio, enemy laners will come first if you go into their jungle, since the laners are usually closer because you're going to the enemy territory. So often when you're invading, you really have to look at, can your lane come first? What is the lane stay? Can enemy laner actually do something to you? Sometimes you can invade without prio, but it is really, really risky unless you know you have a huge advantage. For example, if you're really, really strong, you can invade without prio, and you can really make that 2 or 3 second gap where your laner is coming slower to make a play and make something crazy happen. When you're ganking as Nidalee, you always want to hold your spear for your laner CC if they have a stun. That is really the most important thing when you're ganking as Nidalee. You always want to hit the Q. It gives you the most damage. It allows increased range on your W, so you can gap close easier, use your Cougar combo. So you always want to hold your spear until they stun, into the easy spear, and then into a takedown. Another way to gank as Nidalee is that when the enemy laner is overextending, for example, they're way past the river, they're under your team's tower, and you have rep buff, you can honestly just walk up, start auto-attacking them. Usually enemies will always try to juke your spear because they know it's coming. So you just keep auto-attacking them, keep dishing out your DPS, and then when you feel like your spear is gonna have a really high chance of hitting, or when you're really close to them, then you can get that almost 100% spear, and then you can start doing way more damage. So when you hit the Nidalee spear on a squishy target, you have like 2 options, right? To jump it or not. It's like kind of like the Lee Sin syndrome. And the way I think about it is that, is the enemy carry really fed? Like, what is their team fighting win condition? If that target is like most of DPS, then you could jump in and try to one-shot them. And even if you trade 1-for-1, if your DPS is still alive, then you will most likely win the fight. Another way is that you can actually abuse Zhonya's to your advantage. When you jump in and you kill the target, you still have the option to live. When you use Zhonya's, you have 2.5 seconds of invulnerability, so they can't really do anything to you, so they're just standing on top of you, trying to kill you after you assassinate a target. And usually in that time frame, your team will be able to help you, or you're able to flash out and get to safety. So the way you approach a skirmish when you're playing Nidalee is really similar to ganking. It's pretty much you just want to wait until your teammates to use their CC and then into the spear. It is really important. Another way is that honestly, skirmishes with Nidalee is starting with a 1v1 because you are walking into enemy jungle, you are camping in a bush, for example. And depending on how it starts, you can start with your spear if you know it's going to be a really high chance spear. And then if you miss a spear, you can always run away, since Nidalee has really, really good mobility. You have increased movement speed, you can pounce away, and it's in general a really annoying champ to deal with. You can always play more aggressive with Nidalee since her mobility is so good. So you can often go for those 1v2 situations where you aim to chunk the enemy jungler, enemy laner, and then try to run away when there is help coming. So Nidalee has a few level power spikes. The first one is level 2. You have 4 spells when you gain level 2, so you can make aggressive plays. The other power spike is level 3. You unlock all your abilities. You can also start playing really, really fast, similar to level 2. And the next power spike, I would say, is level 6. Although Nidalee doesn't get an ultimate when you hit 6, it actually, leveling your Cougar form or your OT allows you to do more damage with your Q, W, and E, and it gives like additional benefits. Thank you guys for watching my Nidalee guide. You guys can check me out on my socials. Sometimes I'll stream on Twitch my Nidalee gameplays. You guys can watch the champion action. And thanks to Logitech G for sponsoring this video, and I'll catch you on the next one.